He saved 2 dying Apache women, but had no idea their arrival would break his rules forever. Jesse Hartley had lived alone for as long as he could remember. The desert was his home, a place where the sun was unforgiving and the nights were as cold as the silence that surrounded his ranch. Jesse didn't need anyone. He had his horses, his land, and his rules. No one was allowed close. No one could break the quiet life he had made for himself. It had been this way for years. The storm came out of nowhere. It wasn't the usual dust storm that swept across the plains. This one was different, darker, more violent. The sky darkened, clouds swirling as if the very earth was about to swallow the world whole. Jesse had just finished up feeding the cattle and was heading back to his cabin when he saw it. A figure stumbling across the dirt road, barely able to stand. He squinted against the wind, and his heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just one figure, there were 2. Both women, dragging their feet through the thickening sand, were barely visible in the storm's fury. Jesse's instincts kicked in, but his mind hesitated. He didn't help strangers. Not anymore. Not after the years of hurt, of betrayal, of losing everything he had ever cared for, but something about the women, something about the way they moved in the dust storm. It called to him. Without thinking, Jesse grabbed his coat and rushed outside. He could barely hear his own thoughts over the howling wind, but he could see their exhaustion. Their eyes were closed, their bodies trembling. He moved quickly, knowing he didn't have much time. The storm was getting worse by the minute. He reached them just as one of the women collapsed. His hand shook as he caught her, pulling her close to steady her. Her skin was burned, cracked from the harsh sun, but her breathing was steady. The other woman wasn't far behind, her own steps slow and labored. Jesse didn't know how long they'd been walking, but he knew it wasn't safe out there anymore. "Hang on," Jesse murmured, more to himself than to them. He scooped up the first woman, cradling her in his arms, and carried her into the cabin. The other woman followed close behind, her eyes wide though she barely spoke. Inside, the warmth of the fire hit him like a wall. He lowered the first woman onto the couch, his hands still trembling. His heart pounded in his chest. He'd been alone so long that this sudden encounter with 2 strangers felt wrong, unnatural. He wasn't supposed to care. The second woman, younger than the first, closed the door behind her. She didn't speak at first. Her dark hair was tangled, her face covered in dirt. She stared at Jesse for a long moment, her eyes calculating, watching him closely. Jesse stood frozen, unsure of what to do. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but strong, as if she wasn't used to speaking in such a place. "I wasn't going to leave you out there in the storm," was all he managed to reply. The woman nodded, but there was something in her gaze that made him feel like she knew more about him than she should. She moved closer to the couch where her companion rested. As Jesse stepped away, she placed a hand gently on the first woman's forehead. "Is she going to be okay?" he asked, though he wasn't sure if it was a question for her or himself. Her face was calm, but there was an undercurrent of tension, like she was holding back something important. Finally she spoke. "She will live, but she needs water and rest." "She'll be fine," the woman said, her voice almost reassuring. Jesse didn't know if he believed her or not. He didn't know why he was still here, why he was helping these strangers when he had sworn to himself years ago that he would never let anyone in again. The woman turned to him then. "You're Jesse Hartley, aren't you?" she asked, her voice direct. Jesse froze. He hadn't told her his name. Had she heard about him from the townsfolk? He didn't like the idea of his name traveling. He preferred to stay hidden unnoticed. "I'm not looking for trouble," Jesse said, his tone firm. He didn't like the feeling that crept up his spine, the feeling of being trapped. "I didn't ask for this." The woman studied him for a long time. "Neither did we," she said quietly. "But you've saved us, so we owe you." He watched as the woman sat down beside the other, pulling a blanket over her. He didn't know what to make of them. They were Apache. He could tell by the way they held themselves, by their clothes, by the markings on their skin. But why were they out here? And why had they come to him, of all places? He was no hero. He wasn't the kind of man anyone came to for help. But as he watched the women, something in him stirred. The storm outside raged, but inside the cabin it felt oddly calm. He couldn't help but feel responsible for them now. Jesse turned toward the fire. He didn't want to stay, didn't want to get involved. But the truth was, he already was. The wind had settled, and the storm outside had turned into a faint whisper, leaving the desert night calm and cold. Inside Jesse Hartley's cabin, the fire crackled and popped, casting flickering shadows on the wooden walls. Jesse sat in his chair, his mind still racing from the events of the day. 2 Apache women had stumbled into his life, and now he was forced to confront feelings he thought he had buried long ago. They were strangers, yet they seemed to know him somehow, as if their paths had been destined to cross. The woman who had spoken to him earlier was sitting near the fire, her back straight, watching him carefully. The other woman was still resting on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, her face pale but calm. Jesse had no idea who they were or why they had come, but something about the situation felt different from anything he had ever known. Jesse cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "You said you owed me something." "What do you mean by that?" The woman hesitated, then looked down at her hands before meeting his gaze again. "We come from a long way. Our people, our tribe. We are the last of the ones who were exiled." She paused, as if gathering her thoughts. "You may not understand, but you are part of a much larger story, Jesse Hartley. Your life, your land, it's all tied to something ancient, something you've been running from." Jesse frowned. He had no patience for talk of ancient prophecies or strange stories. His life was simple. He worked his land, he kept to himself, and he didn't meddle in anything that didn't concern him. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice firm. "I'm just a rancher. I don't want any part of some ancient tale." The woman smiled softly, as if she expected his response. "You may think that, but the truth is, you are already part of it. Your blood runs through the history of my people. And now, so does ours." Jesse's eyes narrowed. "What are you saying, that I'm somehow connected to you? I've never even met you before." "It's not about meeting. It's about something older. Our tribes were once united, long before the settlers came to these lands, but we were forced into the desert, pushed to the edges of the earth, and then, one day, our ancestors made a pact that would protect our people for generations, a pact that involves you." Jesse stood, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. "You've got the wrong man. I don't care about any pact or anything that happened long ago. I'm just trying to live my life, and I'd prefer it if you'd leave me out of whatever this is." The woman didn't flinch. "I understand your reluctance, but you don't have a choice." "It's already in motion. The artifact, it's buried beneath your land." Jesse froze. His heart skipped a beat. "Artifact? What are you talking about?" The woman rose to her feet, stepping closer to Jesse. "The artifact is a relic of our ancestors, a symbol of power and peace. It was hidden away, deep beneath the land we once called home. But it was lost to time. We've been searching for it for generations." Jesse swallowed hard. "And you think it's under my ranch?" "Yes. And with it, the fate of both our peoples lies in your hands. The settlers, the mercenaries, they're all searching for it too. They know what it can do, and they'll stop at nothing to take it from us." He had heard whispers of strange happenings, rumors about hidden treasures beneath the earth, but he never thought it would lead to something like this. His life was simple. Now it felt like everything was about to change. "You want me to help you find this artifact?" Jesse asked, his voice a little more steady than he felt. "Why? You don't even know me." "'Cause you're the key. The artifact can only be unlocked by someone with your bloodline. That's why you've been drawn here, why you were the one to save us. You are connected to our tribe more than you know. And it's time for you to fulfill your part." Jesse shook his head, disbelief still clouding his thoughts. "I'm not a part of anything. I just saved you because it was the right thing to do. But that's it, I don't want any part of this." "You already have a part, Jesse," she said softly. "You've had it all along. But the time for running is over. The storm has brought you to us, and now the journey begins." Jesse took a step back, his heart racing. He wasn't ready for this. He didn't want to be a part of some prophecy. He just wanted his quiet life back. But something deep inside him told him that this wasn't just some story. These women, their arrival, it was real. And whatever was buried beneath his land, whatever history was tied to it, was not going to let him walk away. The younger woman, still lying on the couch, stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at Jesse with a mix of gratitude and sorrow, her voice soft as she spoke. "You're not alone in this, Jesse. We've come this far together. And we will walk this path with you, no matter where it leads." Jesse looked between the two women. His world had already been shaken to its core. He didn't want to believe them, didn't want to accept their story, but deep down, he knew that everything was about to change. "You'll stay?" Jesse asked, his voice hoarse. "Yes," the woman replied, "for as long as it takes. Together we will find what was lost. Together we will make sure our people are safe." Jesse turned to look out the window, his thoughts racing. The desert was quiet again, the night peaceful, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The storm might have passed, but the real battle was just beginning, and now he was a part of it. The days after the storm were heavy with silence. Jesse Hartley had never been one for company, and now, having 2 Apache women in his cabin, felt strange, almost unsettling. Maya and Tala, though they were grateful for his help, carried a weight about them that Jesse couldn't ignore. The older woman, Maya, seemed like she knew more than she was letting on, her eyes always scanning the horizon, as if she was waiting for something. Jesse tried to stick to his routines. He cared for his horses, tended to the cattle, and tried not to think about the strange world these 2 women had brought with them. But there was something about them that kept pulling him back into their story. They weren't just survivors of a storm. They were part of something much larger, something Jesse didn't understand yet. The night had fallen quiet, the desert air crisp. Jesse sat outside the cabin, his back to the porch railing as he lit a cigar, the smoke curling into the cool night. The wind had picked up again, this time carrying the faintest sound of hooves in the distance. It was too far to be the regular travelers, the traders who passed through now and then. No, this was different. Tala, the younger of the 2 Apache women, came out to join him. Her expression was serious, her eyes scanning the same horizon. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there with him, her presence more a warning than a comfort. "Something's coming," Jesse muttered, his eyes narrowing. Tala nodded, her jaw tightening. "They're not far. The mercenaries have found us." He had heard the rumors, whispers of a group of hired guns roaming the desert, looking for something valuable, but he had never imagined they would come this close. "They'll be here soon," Tala continued, her voice calm but tense. "They've been tracking us for days. They know we're after the artifact." Jesse stood up quickly, his instincts kicking in. "We have to move. We can't just wait for them to show up at our door." Tala's eyes softened slightly, but there was no hint of fear in her gaze. "Running won't solve anything, Jesse. We're not just trying to escape, we're trying to protect what's ours." Maya appeared in the doorway, her eyes sharp as always. She must have been listening to their conversation. She didn't speak right away, just gave Jesse a long look before stepping outside. Her movements were deliberate, as if she already knew what needed to be done. "They're not the only ones looking for the artifact," Maya said, her voice low but firm. "There are others out there, too. The settlers, some of them want it for themselves, to use it against us, against anyone who stands in their way, but they don't know what they're dealing with. They don't understand the power it holds." Jesse felt a cold chill run down his spine. Power? What kind of power could an old artifact hold that would make people kill for it? He didn't know, and the uncertainty gnawed at him. But he did know one thing. He couldn't let these women down now. He had already made that decision when he brought them inside his cabin. They were no longer strangers to him. They were part of something he couldn't walk away from, no matter how much he wanted to. "We need to find it first," Jesse said, his voice firm now. "If we can find the artifact before anyone else, we might stand a chance of protecting it." Maya nodded, but there was a quiet sadness in her eyes. "The artifact is buried beneath the land you call home, Jesse. And once it's uncovered, it can change everything. It can heal our people, or it can destroy us." The wind picked up, the sound of hooves growing louder, closer. Jesse turned to look toward the horizon, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle he kept on the porch. "They're getting closer," he said, his voice tense. "We don't have much time." Tala looked at Jesse, her expression serious. "There are 3 of them, 3 mercenaries. They're the ones who have been hunting us for days. They're skilled, ruthless, and they won't stop until they have the artifact," Maya added, her tone sharp. Jesse's mind raced. 3 mercenaries. He had faced worse odds before, but this felt different. There was more at stake now. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to protect something much bigger than himself. "We'll make a stand here," Jesse said, his voice steady. "We have the advantage. They won't expect us to fight back." "It's not enough. We need to get to the artifact first, before they do. We can't let them have it." Jesse didn't argue. He knew she was right. If the mercenaries got their hands on the artifact, it would be too late. They would use it for their own gain, and whatever power it held would be lost to the ones who needed it most. As the sound of hooves grew louder, Jesse's grip on his rifle tightened. The night seemed to hold its breath, the world around them going still. Everything was about to change. He could feel it in his bones. "They're here," Tala said, her voice a whisper. Jesse didn't wait for her to say more. He moved quickly, his boots kicking up dust as he headed toward the barn to gather what weapons he could find. Maya and Tala followed close behind, their presence a quiet strength at his back. The mercenaries arrived in a cloud of dust, their horses kicking up the dry earth as they rode into view. 3 of them, just as Tala had said. They were armed to the teeth, their eyes hidden behind dark glasses, their faces unreadable. Jesse stood at the edge of the barn, his rifle aimed at the leader of the mercenaries, a tall man with a scar running down the side of his face. His name was Griggs, and Jesse had heard whispers of him. A mercenary with no loyalty, no morals. Just a man who followed the money. Griggs stopped his horse, eyeing Jesse with suspicion. "Well, well," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "Looks like we found what we were looking for after all. The man who's been hiding 2 Apache women." Jesse didn't flinch.
"I don't know what you're talking about."
"But if you're looking for trouble, you've found it." Griggs smiled, his teeth flashing in the dim light. "You don't know who you're dealing with, Hartley. You think you can stand against me? Against us?" "I don't have to stand against you," he said, his voice cold. "I just have to keep you from getting what you want." As Griggs signaled his men to dismount, Jesse's mind raced. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about stopping a force that could tear apart everything he had ever known. The battle was just beginning, and Jesse had no intention of losing. The wind had quieted, but the air inside Jesse Hartley's cabin felt heavy. He sat near the fire, his rifle resting across his lap. The crackle of the flames was the only sound breaking the stillness. Across the room, Maya and Tala were preparing, their faces set in quiet determination. The mercenaries were getting closer, and Jesse knew time was running out. There was no more time for hesitation. The storm outside had passed, but the real storm, the one that had been brewing in his life, was about to come crashing down. Jesse glanced over at the 2 women. They had become more than just strangers to him. Maya, with her wisdom and strength, and Tala, with her fierce spirit, had drawn him into a world he never wanted to be a part of. He had always prided himself on living alone, making his own rules, and staying far away from trouble. But now, in a way he hadn't anticipated, he realized that the trouble had already found him. "I'm not a hero, you know," Jesse said, his voice low. He had never admitted it out loud before, but now it felt like the right time. "I've spent most of my life keeping to myself, staying out of everyone's way. I'm just a rancher." Maya turned her gaze to him, her eyes steady. "Sometimes, Jesse, you don't have to be a hero. You just have to do what's right." Jesse didn't reply. He didn't know if he believed her. The weight of her words sat heavily on his chest. All his life he had kept his distance, followed his own rules. Trust no one. Stay away from everyone. But now, these rules felt like a chain, and those chains were about to break. As he stood up and moved toward the door, Jesse felt the ground shift beneath him. He wasn't sure when it happened, when his path had veered so far from the one he had planned. But the moment he had decided to help Maya and Tala, everything had changed. He had stepped into something far bigger than himself, and now he had to see it through. "You ready?" Maya said softly, rising to her feet. Jesse glanced over his shoulder. "I don't know if I am," he admitted. "None of us are," she said with a knowing smile, "but we don't have a choice anymore." Outside, the moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale light across the desert. The mercenaries were close. Jesse could hear the sound of hooves again, louder this time, as the men rode toward the ranch. There was no turning back now. He grabbed his rifle, checking it one last time before heading out the door. Maya and Tala followed him, moving quietly, their faces masked with determination. Jesse had spent his life trying to avoid conflict, trying to stay invisible, but now he was about to stand face to face with the enemy. And he knew that whatever happened next, there would be no going back to the way things were. Griggs, the leader of the mercenaries, appeared on the horizon, his silhouette outlined against the desert landscape. His horse kicked up dust as he rode forward, his men following close behind. The 3 of them, Jesse, Maya, and Tala, stood at the edge of the ranch, waiting. The tension was thick in the air, like a storm about to break. "Jesse Hartley," Griggs called out, his voice carrying across the quiet night. "You're the one who's been hiding these Apache women, aren't you?" Jesse's hand tightened on his rifle, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm not hiding anyone. I'm just trying to protect what's mine." Griggs laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Protect what's yours? You don't even know what you're up against, Hartley. You don't know what they're after." "I know more than you think," Jesse replied, stepping forward, his eyes locked on Griggs. "And I'm not going to let you take it." Griggs' smile faltered, his gaze flickering to Maya and Tala. "You think you can stop me? You think these 2 women can protect this land, this artifact? You're out of your depth, Hartley." Maya stepped forward, her eyes cold as steel. It's not the land you want, Griggs. It's the power. The artifact will never belong to you. It's meant for my people, and we will protect it. Griggs didn't seem fazed. I've dealt with your kind before, Maya. You're all the same. You think you can stop progress with your old ways, but progress is coming, whether you like it or not. Jesse took a deep breath. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, but he felt something inside him stir, a strength he didn't know he had. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't just defending his land or his life. He was defending something bigger, a future, a people, and a chance to finally break free from the rules that had held him captive for so long. I don't care about your progress, Jesse said, his voice firm, but I'm not letting you destroy what matters to me. Griggs drew his gun, his men following suit. Then it's time to see if you're willing to back up those words, Hartley. The world seemed to slow as Jesse's hand moved to his rifle, aiming steadily at Griggs. The mercenaries were fast, but Jesse was faster. In a single motion, he fired, hitting Griggs's gun from his hand, sending it spinning to the ground. The other mercenaries hesitated, surprised by the shot. Maya and Tala didn't wait. They moved with swift precision, their instincts guiding them. Maya tackled one of the mercenaries to the ground, while Tala disarmed another in a flash of motion. Jesse moved quickly, his rifle trained on the last mercenary as he backed away, his hands raised in surrender. "You're not getting away with this," Jesse said, his voice low but steady. "Leave. Now." The mercenary hesitated, then glanced at Griggs, who was still recovering from the shot. He knew it was over. Without another word, he turned and fled, his horse galloping away into the night. Jesse lowered his rifle, his heart still pounding in his chest. The fight was over, for now. He glanced over at Maya and Tala, both of them breathing hard but unharmed. "It's done," Jesse said, his voice quieter now. "It's really done." Maya nodded. "For now. But the path ahead is long, Jesse. The artifact isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Jesse nodded slowly. He didn't know where the road ahead would take him, but he was ready. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what was coming. The rules he had lived by, the ones that had kept him alone and safe, were broken. But in their place, something new was growing. "I'm ready," Jesse said, looking at both women. "Let's see this through." Together, the desert stretched out before them, the night still and quiet, but Jesse knew that nothing would ever be the same again.